Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our show. And today I have a pleasure of speaking with Emma Bacon. Hello, Emma. Hi, thank you for joining me in this conversation. So, Emma is a yoga teacher and trauma-informed somatic teacher and coach and retreat host. And I have a pleasure of working with Emma in one of our training certifications. But I'd like to start, Emma, with just inviting you to tell us a little bit about your work and a little bit about your journey, because I know that you've had a lot of lived experience, you've done a lot of training, and I think it would be really great for us to get a sense of how you ended up doing what you're doing right now.
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you for having me join you. I would love to do that. It's really nice sometimes to have a moment to reflect over where you began and where you're coming to next. And I know I am on your course at the moment, your trauma informed somatic teacher and coach course, which I'm loving being able to participate in. And I have done lots of trainings beforehand, including various different styles of yoga. And before that, I had a completely different career working within mental health. And before that, I was struggling with my own mental health. And I think with lots of people, often they come from a place where they may have had some difficulties and troubles themselves that meant that they explored all of the different options available to them to help them improve their health and wellness. And then they feel inspired to offer that to other people, which is exactly what has happened with me. And I found that when I was younger, I had a difficult start and I struggled with complex PTSD as a result, which included issues with anorexia and OCD. And in the process of recovery, which took many years of lots of different modalities, it included a focus on yoga and somatics and reconnecting with my body in a positive way. And that has led me to eventually towards somatics. I wish I found it much sooner, to be honest. I experienced that to begin with, as I was trying to find health and wellness for myself, that I did what we would call in the course a head down approach. So I would go to see a counselor or a psychotherapist, or I would try and work with the mind. And I suppose that was my tendency anyway, was to work with the mind, think something was wrong with my mind. And I was disconnected from my body at that point. For much of my life, I feel like I've been disconnected from my body, even though I put my body through so much. As part of my issues were with anorexia included over exercising. So I would punish the body rather than listen to my body. And it was only in through recovery did I learn to soften that and to learn to nourish the body and respect the body instead of punishing the body. And initially it was yoga that helped me with that. Although looking back, I realized that the teachers that had most positive impact on me were actually yoga and somatic teachers. It's interesting to reflect back on that. And I found yoga as a softening practice. Everything else I did was quite hard, quite in a kind of strong, straight, organized, masculine form of exercise, and life was very busy, and I filled it with so much that I didn't have enough time to think or feel. Like many people, that's a distraction when we're not sure how to cope with what's happening in the moment. But through this whole process, which isn't necessarily something you'd wish upon somebody else, but now looking back, you think I've learned so much from that experience. I suppose they'd call it post-traumatic growth, that I learned so much from it that I think it helps me in the work that I do now. And in the studies that I do now, it influences all of my decisions. But now from a place where I feel much more balanced and healed. And like you say, having had that lived experience, can see it from a different perspective, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. I love how much insight you have about your journey and the different approaches and that kind of understanding of that yoga is such a wonderful practice. I love yoga and it's been part of my life as well. for such a long time. But the classical yoga can be very hard. It can be very masculine. And actually, it makes sense if you look at the history of yoga. Women were not allowed to speak spiritual enlightenment and spiritual path. And really, yoga and yoga practices, yoga movement practices, asana, were not designed for women's bodies as well. When I look at both you and me, we are not young boys who can really work with the body in a certain kind of way. I love what I hear you say, and we were having a conversation before we started this recording. I heard you say that you were practicing and you were doing somatics before you knew the word somatics. Can you say a little bit about that and within the context of your journey?
Yeah, because I know when I first began yoga, and at the time I was doing lots of different types of exercises, and I thought I'll add in yoga because that will be a good counterbalance for the other things I'm doing, which included martial arts and running and hit training and all sorts of things when I wasn't so well. And I added in yoga and somatics eventually as well, because I recognized, I suppose the wise part within me recognized I needed to soften, but I was resistant to begin with. So I would go to a yoga studio where they had all sorts of different classes and teachers. And to begin with, because I was in the mindset where I didn't understand or appreciate the need for balance and between masculine and feminine, I began by doing those types of yoga that were very physically demanding and ordered and structured. And my body taught me that wasn't what it needed. I actually struggled at that time because I was not in balance with my health and wellness. I struggled even with symptoms that sent me to rheumatology to be diagnosed with a form of arthritis at the time, and was taking daily medications in order just to be able to manage. Sometimes I couldn't even walk up the stairs.
Mm.
And my body was teaching me this isn't okay. And the more I wasn't listening, the more it was having to say, this really isn't okay. And I remember the day that I first started to learn about yoga philosophy, because for me, some of the philosophies are so much more important than the movement of asana, of the postures. And when I first started to learn about the 8 limbs of yoga and about ahimsa and non harming and questioning, really trying to be honest and truthful with myself, am I non harming? And it was so obvious, blindingly obvious. I was trying to be non harming to everybody else, but I was the complete opposite towards myself at that time. And in that moment, I decided to change. I decided that isn't who I want to be. And I just made a decision one day that I wanted to be different, that I had got to a point where it was enough. And so I started to practice in a very different way. I started to practice rather, I stopped going to the difficult classes. I started going to yin yoga. I started going to yoga nidra, to somatics classes, to doing much softer practices, including meditation, and really began feeling my body. It was almost as if I had arrived in my body for the first time. And in that whole process, I was also trying to manage and juggle life. I was running a charity, I was being a wife, I had 2 children, and I was trying very hard also to be good and healthy and happy in order to be a good mother and a good wife and a good friend and a good daughter, and all of these expectations that we place on ourselves. And when I softened in my practice, when I started learning more about the yoga philosophies, really listening to my body, really nourishing my body for the good, in a good way. So I realized now I was living, previously, I was living based on my body on the outside and I was cut off from it, disassociated. But then as I began to practice yoga and somatics more and learn about the philosophies behind them, then I started to practice from my soma, from the inside out. And I changed my whole life around, in fact, at that point. Because I was working like lots of young mothers with young children. I was probably working four different jobs, trying to juggle them around the kids so that I could be with the kids. And it meant I was always running from one place to another, and I was always taking one hat off and another uniform on and jumping from one thing to another. I didn't really have time to even reflect on whether that was what I needed. But then we decided to make a change. My husband and I decided actually we would like it to be different. And it was actually instigated. Well, one of my good friends passed away from anorexia, and I just paused everything for a few moments. For a few days, we went away and reflected, and I thought things need to be different. This isn't sustainable, the way that we are, the way that I am. So we actually just surprised everyone, and we decided, okay, we're going to sell our house. We're going to sell our business that we were running at the time. We're going to change everything, and we're going to go and buy a campsite out in the middle of the countryside, and we're going to bring everything into one place, and we're going to get animals. Let's spend more time outside. Let's do more yoga. Let's build a yoga studio. Let's really bring all of our life together and make it feel sustainable, make it feel nourishing, and change our focus from do to actually to being and to spending our time like that. And that made a massive difference as to how much I could connect with nature, connect with my body, connect with interesting also the seasons, because running a campsite is very seasonal. So I just naturally became more aligned with the seasons. And in doing so, my mental health improved so much, my physical health improved. I really felt so much more in balance, to the extent I was discharged from the hospital and I didn't need any medications, and I had no symptoms that could be linked to kind of problems with aches and pains and joints. And I really felt like for the first time, I was in a good, really good place from the inside out. And then from there, I built on that with somatics, because I had already done training in different types of yoga. And as you said, I was practicing somatics without even realizing it by that point, because I didn't get on the mat and just do the poses for the sake of the poses. I was feeling into the ground. I was creating a safer place for myself. And then once I felt that also from my students, and then I was really wanting to feel into the body and the breath and the connections, and practice much more mindful practice, especially when COVID came along. We all needed that so much, didn't we?
Yes, yes. I absolutely love listening about your journey. And what really stands out for me listening to that is how much courage you had, because it is very courageous to actually then decide to listen to your body, to do things differently, to change your life completely for you and your husband and your family, and actually say, that's it, this is unsustainable. I don't want to live in this way. This is not going to support me, support my husband, support my family. And making that decision to actually take full responsibility for your own well-being and the well-being of your family, and making a very different decision.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage.
I realize with everything we've been learning in our course, which has been reassuring in actual fact, because I feel like when we're doing a course about the trauma informed somatic teacher and coach, I've been learning about everything in depth that I have been experiencing in real life. And when I look back, one of the things that the course has helped me to solidify is that at the time in the past, when I was doing things that were perhaps less than ideal, that's what I could cope with. That's what my capacity was at that time. That was my way of managing. And yeah, I can sit here and think, oh, I wish I'd done A, B, or C sooner, but I couldn't do A, B, and C sooner.
Yeah.
That's the way it was then, and this is the way it is now. And now I feel so much more grounded and balanced and softened, and so much more in balance with my masculine and feminine energies that I can really embody, which is what we learn about in the course. I can really embody the practices. I can really feel like I'm able to support myself from inside, and then through that inner strength and trust. that I've developed, then I can help other people to find space to do that for them too. And I
Yeah.
know in the past, there've been moments where I've wanted to help people, but I've known that I'm not in a position to help them. And so I have, for example, back in many years ago, I set up a self-support group for people affected by eating disorders. But I knew that I wasn't the person to run that group because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't strong enough in myself to not be negatively influenced or affected or to know what the right thing to do was. So I set the group up, but I found the right person to run it. But now, many years on, I've developed so much more balance and trust that now I feel like, okay, over the last 10 years or so, we've been running the campsite in nature with the animals and the yoga studio. And now we're offering different yoga retreats, whether it be half days, 1 days, weekends, international retreats. And I can put all of this experience that I have, all of this knowledge and all of this training, I can now bring it all together. And I really felt that the course that I'm doing with you, Annetta, it felt like I've been on this big journey that has included my own personal experience, included all of the training that I've done, and that there was this big circle and that the dot to dot all adding up into one big circle. And I felt like somatics was the last one. That's how it felt to me, that I'm not saying, and my husband would laugh his head off if I said this was the last course that I'm ever committed to. But I did feel like somatics will completed the circle. And
Mm,
in that circle, I can add things maybe. But I also love to be able to let things settle and let them really practice what we
yeah.
want. Not just
So if I, yeah, so if I can ask you, I guess there are two questions. One is, I know that you just started a new business, which is called
land, live, give. So it's,
Learn, Live, Give. I'd like to hear about that. Tell us about a little bit about this new business that you just started.
yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I have this tendency towards having an idea, working really hard to make that idea come into fruition, and then work, and never stop long enough to reflect. But now that I'm wiser and older, I now do stop and reflect. And we have this wonderful place where we've developed the campsite, the glamping, the yoga studio with the animals, and our children have grown up here. But now our children are a little bit older and more independent. We started to think we're coming towards a time in our lives where we're wanting to quieten down a little bit. And I think I spent my whole life trying to gradually quieten myself down. And what we decided, rather than, because it's very easy, I want to say it's really easy to get caught up in wanting to provide health and well-being to other people to the extent that it becomes overwhelming for yourself, that you feel such a responsibility to maintain this safe place for so many people because you know how much it means to you. And that's exactly what we did and that we continue to do. But after 20 years of doing that, my husband and I started to think it would be nice now, after this, learning these lessons, to also have a little bit more freedom to be able to have quiet time for ourselves as well. And so, what we did, instead of running regular weekly yoga classes, instead of opening the campsite for 6 months, you have to make hay where the sun shines with that kind of work. We decided to change things up again, and Learn, Live, Give is a project where we wanted to learn and understand as much as we could about different topics linked to health and wellness, including yoga and somatics and philosophy and nutrition and how to manage stress, etc. And we wanted to take those learnings and live according to those learnings, to live that way, to be an example, to embody those qualities and those principles. And then from that, we wanted to then give back in lots of different ways, including running monthly half-day yoga and somatics sessions, including running 1 day or weekend retreats in the UK. We also run retreats abroad at different places. And we wanted to bring the knowledge about yoga and somatics and philosophy and coaching all together, but in a way that also provided us a bit more freedom to go traveling. I love the idea of going traveling, experience and learning from that culture, providing yoga and somatics retreat to people, including coaching, and then to be continue the traveling and incorporate some volunteering, maybe even encourage other people to join us in that volunteering, and then to come home and then think, okay, what next? And we've learned that Give is about creating that space and sharing that. And some of what we share is part of a business that helps us to put food on the table, and some of it we want to give for free as well. For example, we're hosting a yoga philosophy podcast called Yoga Matters, where it's just free to access. And each week we talk about a different yoga philosophy or principle and how it relates to real life. But it's nice because my husband and I are doing it together. And me as the yoga teacher and him as it's not, he loves doing the yoga, but he's very much more of a masculine, scientific kind of prove it kind of attitude. And that's what we're trying to find, that balance between the masculine and feminine with us live on the podcast. And it's really fun because it keeps both of us have to have a maybe mindset and an open mind with everything we're exploring, including the somatics. He's joining in with that too. And it's all exciting, but it's very much evolving as we go along. And somatics has been integral to it, not only in what we're offering, but also in how we're offering it.
And I love that. I love that. I love it that you're doing it with your husband. I love it. It's actually, maybe I should ask my partner to come and do some interview with me. That might be very interesting. I love it because there is such a freshness when I'm listening to you. What I'm getting is there is this freshness, this way of contemplating and reflecting what's been up to this point and moving forward. How do you want to move forward? How do you want to create a business and life that is built on your values, on what's most important to you, on community, on giving back, but giving in a different way that really supports the season of life that you are in, which is the early autumn. And really understanding that it is a different life season and that you have permission and you can give yourself permission to live it in a way that is right for you while still contributing and building community and supporting others, just in a slightly different way, from a way that takes care of you as well. Yeah.
And that's been brilliant about the course, actually, because I feel that as we're learning everything in the course, we as students on the course benefit from all of the information that we learn. Our friends and our family benefit from everything we're learning, and then our students or our clients benefit. And it's so nice to have that integrated. And it weaves in everything that we're learning, helps to either make sense of something we didn't understand or reassure something that our wisdom already knew, and then explore what is next.
Yeah.
It all just
Could I ask you, because I mean, before we started recording, actually yesterday when we had a question and answer for the training, you were talking about your experience of running retreats, because you run a number of retreats, and bringing this work from the training into your retreat. And I think it would be really great to hear you talk a little bit about this, because I think even this week I had a conversation with somebody who was thinking about coming to the training, and she was saying, how do people use it? What do people do with this material? Because there is so much stuff covered in the training, but what do people do? And I think when I was listening to you talking about how you brought it into your retreats, it really gives a very good way of how this material can be integrated into what you're already doing.
Yeah, it's true, because I remember when I first started the course, I was thinking I want to bring somatics into what I already do with the yoga retreats. And then as we were going through the course, I was so enthusiastic and excited to learn everything we were talking about. My mind started going down an old pattern of thinking, oh, I could set up this and I could do this and I could such and such, and overwhelming myself. But then because of the learned experience and listening to my body, listening to my values and what it is we decided actually was there. Don't repeat the same old patterns. What is it do you really want? Just because you could doesn't mean that you should. And in doing that, I then brought myself back and again reflected and thought, no, that where you started was where that's what you want right now. And it might change. But at the moment, we're integrating the somatics into the yoga. Anything that I do with yoga has somatics linked in with it in every single way. So, for example, I've just run a weekend yoga retreat, which I repeat again in June. And then in September, I run the same retreat for different people. And it's lovely because even though it's the same retreat, it always feels so different with a different dynamic, a different group of people. And I design the retreats in the same way as I would normally, with including yoga in the morning and the afternoons. But I love to incorporate some sort of coaching, journaling, discussion, group discussion, reflection within it. And the retreats are always themed on a topic that will support anybody's life journey. And with the somatics, I could incorporate some of the practices that suited what we were learning and what we were doing. But also, I was able to think about it in line with the seasons. So, this particular weekend retreat, I was thinking when we've been learning about cycles and living in different cycles, how on a retreat we begin in that spring season in the retreat where we are laying the foundation, we're sowing the seeds initially when everybody meets. Some people may already know each other, some don't. We're trying to create a safe, nourishing environment where something can grow and ultimately where that person can grow from inside out. And then that's my intention at the beginning of the retreat, to provide that, to create that or encourage that. And then as we go through the retreat, we can then work through the season of summer where there's more activity, there's more contemplation, more learning. And I like to include not only the physical yoga and somatic practices, but also time to reflect, to discuss, to meditate, to do different practical activities, and really explore some of the topics that we've learned about in the course and understand ourselves better. And then from that point, we then move towards autumn, the season of autumn in the retreat, which it is all about and not only celebrating the harvest, if you like, of what we've learned, of what we've explored. We're celebrating, but we're also learning what to let go of. Maybe there's new understanding. That means we can let go of an old belief to make space for a new understanding. And there's time to be able to rest and process and digest everything. That's the lovely thing about retreats that I get so enthusiastic about, because people have the time to focus on it without the distractions from other parts of life. And then into winter, where we can finally, my husband always says, I hate winter. Why would you do winter? But it's because winter is a time for deep rest, for reevaluating. And it's in that moment of rest, like in that moment of Shavasana. I said to my husband, do you hate Shavasana? He said, no, that's my favorite bit. I said, well, then you don't hate winter, because winter is about Shavasana. It's about resting and like recalibrating. It's about letting everything settle. Like the snow in the winter is settling down like the snow in a snow globe, and everything is calm and cozy and warm and nourishing. And that's where we develop this new inner trust that we then take into the next spring. And so our weekend retreat is all about this. And of course, with it being trauma informed, although we're doing these topics, if you like, it really that can be about anything. Because with it being trauma informed, one person might experience that retreat in relation to a relationship they have, or a career change that they're wanting, or the way that they're viewing themselves or their own mental health well-being. So everybody's experience is so personal and individual, even though we're following the same cycle and have that unity, that connection, doing the same things, but in our own unique way. And I just love that. There's nothing else that creates that enthusiasm in me, which is why I do it, why I love it all so much.
I love that. I know that there is lots of yoga teachers these days that work with the seasons, but there is an element of understanding the nervous system, understanding the trauma-informed approach, understanding how to hold space for people, how to ask questions that allow people to go deeper and actually be able to hold that space for them to work through it. That actually it's a slightly different skill, very different skill sometimes than the skill of teaching yoga, but bringing those skills together can be such a powerful thing, especially within the retreat kind of container where people are there together for a day or for a couple of days or for a few days. That's a powerful transformation for people. Yeah.
If you then combine it, like we recently went to Sri Lanka and we were there for a 10-day retreat. So when you combine all of that possibility alongside being in such a beautiful natural environment, it's just, it's nothing short of magic sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. So I wonder if I could ask around the training that you're doing with me, what's the thing that you love the most? What's the thing that landed the most and that you love the most about it that you took away with you?
It's really hard to pinpoint what I like most because there are so many different things. As someone that has recovered from complex PTSD myself, I found learning the course really trauma informed in itself, which is definitely not the case in with all courses. I've done other courses where my nervous system has felt like in chaos doing different training courses because there's just so much to think about, so much to do, and not enough consideration as to how we learn and also giving us the time to process. Whereas when we're learning with you, we have 3 weeks where we're learning and we have things we can do in between, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. And then we have a week off from the actual training course so that we can really process everything. We can catch up if for some reason we couldn't continue, if we needed extra rest or if we were unwell or anything pops up, because life does that sometimes. There's space to be able to do that. And it's really lovely how in the course, with it being a smaller group, I've been in some training courses where there's been 50 people and you don't get to know the other students, you don't get to understand one another, and therefore you can't develop a real deep sense of trust between each other. And that's not the case in this instance because we do have a smaller group of people. We do connect on a deeper level, and it feels really easy to be honest and open up, and to know that you are there as the teacher to guide that and facilitate that helps us to feel safe as a student to experience that and always be able to ask questions in that time or in our WhatsApp group or on the Facebook group. It just feels really nourishing and supportive. And then all of the information that we're learning, and even that I see how that goes through the seasons also. And when we're in the summer of the of learning, it feels like, oh, this is a lot. But then when we get towards the autumn of the learning, then we are thinking, okay, it's starting to make sense. It's all coming together and settling. And now I feel a little bit more rested and ready to share it and to spread this information. And you just want to help other people understand what we're learning because you know how much of an impact it can have, because it does have an impact on us even as we're going through the course.
What kind of impact has it had on you? Have you noticed anything in particular?
I feel like the course is quite empowering because it is very supportive and it provides a space for us to reflect in a deep way. And I love the fact that even when we're given homework, the homework is not to write an essay, but to write a reflection. That it doesn't feel like we are studying or we are doing homework or we're doing projects for the sake of it as a tick box. It feels like we are learning and then we are experiencing and then we're reflecting on that experience. And in that process, that's how they used to learn in yoga as well. You put it into practice, you embody it. And that's what we really take from it. It's not just a tick box exercise, it's you're living it. And in living it, you're helping other people to live it. I have 3 teenage children it helps them. It helps me be a better parent, even just doing the training. It's about life. It's not really about a qualification. We're learning about life, aren't we? We're learning how life works, how we work as a person. And in doing that, it helps everything.
I love that. Thank you. Let's really think about your next steps. What is your kind of vision? I'd love to hear a little bit more about the kind of thing that you're working on in this new business. What is the way forward? What will you be working on? What's the dream?
The dream. The dream is to allow Learn, Live, Give to evolve into its fullest. And who knows really when that goes. We have an idea and we've been putting together, we have a website, learnlivegive.co.uk. And we've put different titles on the homepage and thinking, this is what we want to do. And it includes yoga events, yoga and somatic events and retreats that will also incorporate coaching elements and philosophy. It includes the podcast, but it also includes creative pursuits. There are books that we want to write. There's artwork we want to create, but we also want to go traveling. We want to explore and see what can we learn from all the people that we meet, from all the cultures we come across, from the volunteering that we can do. And what can we learn from that and then give back from that learning? And then in the background of that, we're still running the campsite, but just bank holidays and school holidays with the yoga studio there as well. And that's lovely to meet people, especially regular people that we come into contact with over and over again that come back. And the podcast, which has been really fun. I'd like to develop that further. At the moment, my husband and I have been doing that together, but I'd love to collaborate with other people in the future because we learn from each other, don't we? And we inspire each other. And I want to then bring all of that together in a way that remains creative and sustainable without it feeling overwhelming. And everything that I've learned from the course will help me to do that, will help me to stop and pause, reflect, consider, and then move forward. So you've been helping me learn how to keep doing that. And who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe as the kids get older and we go in a slightly different direction again, I want to go with it. And I remember on one of the training sessions we did recently, we had a guest speaker and she showed this amazing picture of the mountains. And at the bottom of the mountain, there was this beautiful stream that came by. And it really spoke to me in that moment because she was explaining the structure of the mountains was the masculine quality that provided that structure for then the flow of the river and the movement, that feminine movement to go with the flow. And the river shapes the mountains and the mountains holds the river. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to create. And I'll probably get it wrong sometimes and I'll get it right sometimes. But I'm going to see where it takes us. But yeah, it's going to be a fun journey to get wherever we're going.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that, Amma, because it's that sense of understanding how life works, isn't it? That you can have the direction and you might know the next couple of steps, but actually we never know how it's going to unfold and we don't know what kind of inspiration we will get and we don't know how life will direct us. And there is a lot of curiosity and a lot of heart in it, which is so beautiful. Yeah. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining me here today. If people wanted to connect with you and maybe come and do some retreats with you or work with you in some capacity or collaborate, how can they find you?
So we have the website learnlivegive.co.uk and all the details are on there, including our contact details. We have weekend yoga retreats coming up, and then we're off to Morocco in October. And then I'm so excited to be running a retreat in Costa Rica in January, February next year, and then Andalusia. And we have hopes for going to India and Canada and all sorts of other places. And I welcome ideas, like you say, other people can also shape and lead where we go and what we do. We'd love people to get in touch and they can listen to the podcast, which is called Yoga Matters, on our website or Spotify, most platforms that do the podcast, you can find that available too. and it'd be lovely to connect with people.
Thank you so much, Emma.